What's up, guys? This video is going to be about races in Baldur's Gate 3. So it looks like at the moment of this video, which is today is let's see, November 1st, 2023, so this may change in the future with additional patches and content added to the game. Make sure to check the timestamps in my videos for future updates. So looks like we have Elf, Tiefling, Drow, Human, Githyanki. I'm not familiar with that race. Dwarf, half-elf, halfling, gnome, dragonborn, and the half-orc. So let's go ahead and click on each of these and take a quick glance at some of these features so we can get an idea of the benefits of each race. So looks like elf, principal stat, primary ability is dexterity. Tiefling, dexterity, drow, dexterity, human, dexterity. That might be just based on something along the lines of the classes. Let me just click through these. I see. So that's not determined by the race. Okay, so let's take a look again here. Under elf, we have, with ethereal countenances and long lifespans, elves are at home with nature's power, flourishing in light and dark alike. Race features: 9 meters per turn, base racial speed, elven weapon training, proficiency with longsword, short bow, longbow, dark vision, can see in the dark up to 12 meters, and Fey ancestry, advantage on saving throws against being charmed, and magic can't put you to sleep. That's a pretty significant combat feature. Vision features, certain weapon proficiencies, base speed. Let's take a look over here. Cantrips, we've got Firebolt, True Strike. Under spells, we have Find Familiar. Summon a familiar, Fey Spirit takes an animal form. Let's see. Oh, I see. Those must be Ranger features. So it would be helpful. I guess the race features are only down here, but that's why we're doing this video. We're just obviously gonna kind of take a look and see, differentiate what each race has in terms of its features. Looks like this is just for the actual class, so we'll have to cover that in the next video. Skills, armor, and weapons. Some of those might change a little bit. Yeah, it looks like they change. When I change some of these races, it looks like some of the weapon proficiencies change. Armor proficiencies maybe. Looks like mostly armor change. Looks like skills change a little bit, and then the weapon proficiencies are really what is changing. Cantrips changing a little bit. That might be featured. Yeah, that's featured down over here under the racial section. Some of those proficiencies are probably included down here also, so we'll just go ahead and read this stuff since this seems to be specific to the race, and this is the overall character sheet. So let's focus on this side of things, and then we can cover this other stuff in other videos. So we already covered with the elf certain movement speed capabilities and vision, and then proficiencies in certain weapons and special saving throw capabilities against being charmed. Let's take a look at, and it's interesting that the way they've structured this, in similar games they would often have races specializing in certain stats. Let me see. These numbers don't seem to change. Yeah. So it's just proficiencies and then some of these other base features. So that's interesting. Looks like this is the main. What happens if I press T here? Oh, I see. It just highlights it in a particular way. So that's kind of the main abilities. It looks to me like the ones that are purple in the background kind of have, that might be something that indicates unique features to that race. So let's move on to the Tiefling. 9 meters per turn, racial speed, dark vision, similar to the elf. Now they have hellish resistance. You have resistance to fire damage, taking only half damage from it. That's pretty significant. That's interesting. I noticed that the cantrip is different. Okay, so they didn't feature the racial cantrip over here. So let's take a quick look at that over here on the right for the elves, since apparently that's not featured in the racial abilities. They should correct that. Let's see. Firebolt, evocation cantrip, 1 to 10 damage. Hurl a mote of fire. That's apparently a elvish cantrip ability. And then here for the Tiefling, it looks like they've got produce flame. Let's see, a flame in your hand sheds a light in a 9-meter radius and deals damage. Okay, that's interesting. Let's take a look at the drow, or the drow, however they say it. Looks like dancing lights, illuminate a 9-meter radius, special cantrip. That's listed over here also, so that's interesting. Maybe they need to update those. Okay, so the racial features, pretty similar over there. Drow weapon training, proficiency with a rapier, short sword, and hand crossbow. That's interesting. And then we've got superior dark vision. They have twice the amount of dark vision that the other races had, which is 9 meters. Or 12 meters. And then they have Fey ancestry, saving advantage on saving throws against being charmed, and magic can't put you to sleep. So that's similar to the elvish feature there. Their main racial feature looks like it is the ability to see further, and also special weapons, rapier, short sword, hand crossbow. Let's look at the human race. Similar movement capabilities, civil militia, weapon proficiency with spears, pikes, halberds, and glaives, and armor proficiency with light armor and shields. So it looks like they have longer reach martial weapons and then light armor and shields there. Human versatility, select an additional skill to be proficient in. Your carrying capacity is increased by 1/4. See, that is a significant racial attribute. I remember this is kind of similar to what they had in the old Neverwinter Nights game, and that was like a big deal when you had a large number of levels to achieve. You can get some significant advantages with your skills. Let's take a look at the cantrip here. Looks like True Strike, which is typical, and then doesn't seem to be anything else sticking out. But let's look at this other race. I'm not familiar with this race. Githyanki. So they've got an action proficiency in all skills of a chosen ability. That's interesting. Then they have a cantrip, Githyanki Psionics Mage Hand. Create an invisible spectral hand that can manipulate and interact with objects. So that's kind of like a telekinesis ability for like environmental manipulation. That's unique. Typical movement, let's see. Martial Prodigy, a lifetime of relentless training gave you armor proficiency with light and medium armor, as well as proficiency with short sword, long sword, and great sword. That's interesting. They kind of have some unusual combinations of like a little bit semi-mage, but then they have like moderate level warrior proficiencies. Let's see if there's nothing unusual over here. And then that it's kind of hard to tell at a glance what that proficiency in all skills of a chosen ability might be, how useful that might be. Let's move on to the dwarf. So actually they have lower movement speed, 7.5 meters per turn opposed to 9 meters. And then dwarven combat training, proficiency with the battle axe, hand axe, light hammer, and war hammer. Then they have typical dark vision. Then dwarven resilience, have an advantage on saving throws against poison, and you have resistance to poison damage. That's unique. And then the cantrips seem to be pretty typical. So the dwarves are interesting. They have weaker movement speed, but some interesting resistances in combat training. Let's move on to the half-elf. Half-elf, typical movement speed. Civil militia, looks like that's the same as what the humans had. And then dark vision and advantage on saving throws against being charmed. So it's kind of like a combination of human and elf features. A little bit of the best of both of them to some degree. And they also have that typical firebolt cantrip, which is curious. Moving on to the halfling, we've got shorter movement speed like the dwarves at 7.5, then lucky, when you roll a 1 for an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw, you can re-roll the die. You must use the new roll. Okay. So it eliminates the absolute worst. So if there's... I don't know what the... I guess it's a 20-sided die, right? Right. So I could be mistaken on that. But I guess that's like in the... If it's a 20-sided die, then it's like 5% chance to roll a 1. So every once in a while, if you roll a 1, you get to re-roll. So that's interesting. Then Brave, you have an advantage on saving throws against being frightened. So no, not as easy to make run away, which is that's kind of ironic since they're halflings. But okay, moving on to the gnome. Small, energetic, clever gnomes use their long lives to explore. Okay, so they have weak movement speed, and then gnome cunning, advantage on intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saving throws. Wow. So they have a large range of attribute bonuses in terms of saving throws, which probably makes it easier for them to evade like traps and dungeons and stuff like that, I would guess. Looks like there's nothing else. That's like a super specific, let me see here. Stealth, Arcana, History, Nature, Survival, Persuasion. I see. So, yeah, that's something that I didn't super cover because they're not, it's difficult to tell. They're not putting all the racial features in this section so that you can see it all. But it looks like there are bonuses to the races in the skills section. Some of these things, like for humans, survival on wisdom gives you a +4, stay alive in the wilds, track prey. I'm not going to cover all those because there's a ton of them, but it looks like there are advantages, and it looks like the gnome has double the advantage on history saving or history skills, so those apply to specific skills, and you definitely want to make sure you look at those before you spec into a particular class, because those obviously affect those dice rolls. Pardon me. So yeah, apologies. That's a little bit more complex, but I guess you just want to make sure to look at each of those before you pick your class, in addition to your race, also because those seem to be racially affected. Looks like the elves have bonuses to wisdom. In particular, looks like wisdom and dexterity. The type. Let's just cover this briefly. Tiefling bonus to dexterity and wisdom. Drow bonus to dexterity, wisdom. Let's take a look at the humans. Bonus to much bigger, a little bit bigger bonus to dexterity, a little bit to wisdom. Let's take a look at the Githyanki. Bonus to dexterity, wisdom. Maybe I'm misunderstanding some of this stuff, like because a lot of these bonuses are like +1 on some of these rolls. Looks like the dwarf has a bonus to dexterity and wisdom also. Half elf looks like dexterity, wisdom. A lot of these are just bonuses to stealth and survival, so that's interesting. Let's take a look. The halfling looks like dexterity and wisdom also. Everybody has kind of the similar stuff until you get to the gnome, which seems to have a bonus to intelligence and dexterity and also wisdom. Okay, moving on to the dragonborn. Their racial features, just a movement ability. Looks like they have a special action for acid breath, which gives them a special ability 2 to 6, or wait a second, 2 to 12, 2d6 on acid. Let's see here, dexterity save, 5-minute cooldown. So that's they have a special ability, but they don't really have any attributes, any special racial features. So that's kind of strange. Anyways, let's look at their skills. Looks like dexterity and wisdom, and everything else is kind of typical. Nothing else fancy going on. That might be It might be that some of these races receive bonuses to specific classes. Like only specific races can pick certain classes. It's not clear to me yet because I haven't gotten there. But nothing innately to the race, so they might have limitations on the racial features because of bonuses to, I see, sub-races, or let me look at the sub-races feature. Ah, okay, geez. That adds like a huge dynamic to it. So these different races have different action features, and also the blood of ancient dragons flows through your veins. You are resistant to specific types of damage depending on the sub-race that you pick for Dragonborn. Okay, so it's a little bit unfortunate that they nestle that sub-race section there. Let's go to the half-orc, and then we can check to make sure we haven't missed any sub-race features. So the half-orc has the typical movement speed, and then dark vision at 12. Relentless endurance. If you reach 0 hit points, you regain 1 hit point instead of becoming downed. Ooh, that is a sweet feature right there. Then we have savage attacks. When you land a critical hit with a melee weapon attack, you deal an extra dice of weapon damage. Jeez. Hold on a sec. When you land a critical hit with a melee weapon attack, you deal an extra dice of weapon damage. Okay. Golly, that is, for those melee classes, that is somewhat overpowered. You just rack up that critical hit percent, right? And then over here, let's look. You got stealth. And in terms of the skill bonuses, wisdom. This looks like a couple of extra persuasion, or a couple extra charisma features there. Nothing fancy on these other things. Simple weapons, martial weapons. That seems to be pretty typical across the classes. It looks like some of these, though, like the humans and the half-elves, have other weapon proficiencies. Certainly the dwarves. We kind of covered that. That's part of their racial attributes, so we don't really need to cover that. The drow has some unique proficiencies, so that's curious. And the elves also. Let me make sure. Okay, so the elves have sub-races. The high elf gives them that firebolt ability. The wood elf gives them a little bit more movement speed, so that's unique. I wonder if that changes their general racial feature. I don't think so. Let's look at the Tiefling. Looks like they've got the Asmodeus Tiefling with fire damage. Or wait a second. It's a light ability that does fire damage. Then there's a cantrip that does spectral hand that can manipulate, interact with objects. So that's a charisma ability with an 18-meter range. Then we've got the Zerial Tiefling transmutation cantrip to gain an advantage on intimidation and performance checks for 10 turns. That's interesting. So that's looked like a charisma attribute. Might have some interesting use cases. Anyways, let's go to the drow. Looks like they have the Sworn Drow subrace and the Seldarine Drow subrace. Looks like they're only changes in appearance. They don't seem to have any special features, unless I'm mistaken. So anyways, let's move on to the humans. Looks like no subraces. Githyanki. Looks like no subraces. Dwarves. We got the Golden Dwarf, which has your hit point maximum increases by 1 and increases by 1 again every time you gain a level. Oh, wow. So they're tankly. That's pretty cool. Let's go to the Shield Dwarf. So that is, you have armor proficiency with light and medium armor. That's cool. I guess that's a bonus that doesn't show up over here. The proficiency's some sort of passive bonus, maybe. I don't see it. Okay. That hit point thing is crazy because the base is 12. I don't know how many levels there are, but it seems like you could really get beefy with that. Anyways, let's go to the Durgar Dwarf. Looks like double the dark vision, and then advantage on saving throws against illusions and against being charmed or paralyzed. That's pretty significant. That's almost like a dark elf or drow type of a hybrid dwarf, so that's pretty interesting. Underdark dwarf. They have some pretty neat features. Anyways, let's move on to the half-elf. I think we looked at these already. Let me double check. Yeah, I think we did. Fire, movement speed, and then, yeah, dancing lights. So that's illumination. Okay, I think we looked at those. Then we look at the halfling. Let's look at these. So the Lightfoot halfling has an advantage on stealth checks. Nice, that's cool. Then the Strongheart halfling, advantage on saving throws against poison and resistance to poison damage. That's pretty cool. Okay. Moving on to the gnome, we got the rock gnome, which has dark vision and twice your proficiency bonus to history checks. That's pretty specific. Then the forest gnome looks like they have a spell to speak with animals, ability to comprehend and communicate with beasts. That's pretty unique. And then dark vision, that's cool. The deep gnome is the next one, which is kind of I guess an underdark race, double the dark vision, and then advantage on stealth checks. So, why would you want to do... Oh, I see. Wait a second. So only one of these... I think only one of these gave a stealth check. This is a history check gnome. And that's a dark vision one and the animal one. This one's double the vision and then stealth checks. Oh, see, I must be thinking of that halfling we were looking at. Anyway, so those are some unique options. And then I already looked at the Dragonborn. Their main thing is just like this special... Like you can pick a dragon type, and I guess it gives you a specific element and also resistance to that element. So that's a pretty proprietary ability. It's not sort of limited, but it's also unique. Anyways, last one, the half orc doesn't look like they have a subrace. So there's a lot going on, and we'll just have to check out some of the other sections as we move on. I'm going to pick a race here in a minute, but that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you guys later. Bye bye.